I can tell you that the #1 problem in Hollywood was and is and always will be pedophilia.
A new docuseries called Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of TV is getting massive attention, exposing how famous Hollywood names will go out of their way to support a pedophile over a child victim, and just how toxic the environment at Nickelodeon can get for a child actor. The biggest revelation of the series was a testimonial from actor Drake Bell, who for the first time publicly reveals his story about getting sexually abused as a minor at the hands of Brian Peck, a dialogue coach who worked on set.
My name is Drake Bell, and I came here today to tell my story.
Have you ever told your story publicly before?
I've never told my story publicly.
Drake's testimonial has deep parallels with my experience as a child sexual abuse survivor. Though I was not in the industry myself, I was groomed and sexually abused around the same age by someone I considered a mentor, much like Peck was to Drake. We'll be discussing all of that and more coming up in this video. The series mainly focuses on the highly acclaimed producer Dan Schneider. He was the man behind huge hits like Drake and Josh, iCarly, Zoe 101, and many others. The first couple of episodes of Quiet on Set explore the uncomfortable situations that Schneider put the actors in, including scenes with inappropriate jokes. I grew up watching these shows, and I'll just say personally, I never saw the sexual innuendos, but watching it as an adult, a lot of this stuff does come off as weird. Like, is there some sick fetish that Dan Schneider wants to impose on these kids with the feet and the tongues and the slime on their faces? This webcam video of underage Ariana Grande doing what resembles an OnlyFans show? It's all just weird. And watching this, I'm also wondering, how did the network executives approve all of this? A lot of the focus was on Schneider, but who's his boss? There were many complaints about Dan's abusive power trip and just strange behavior highlighted in the series. He would treat his staff unfairly, have women give him massages on set. There's even a video of him in a hot tub with Amanda Bynes, who was also underage at the time. Arden Young, an investigative journalist who recently exposed Pornhub, is a former child actor who revealed what happened to her in the industry. Here's what she said about Dan from an interview that we did together.
I would audition for his show that was on at the time, Sam and Cat. And then I remember my mom talking to another parent at an acting class and mentioning that I had a Sam and Cat audition. And the other parent goes, "Oh, you know, if she books that, just stay away from Dan."
As weird as his behavior was, there is no proof that he sexually abused any kids. He was fired in 2019 and even issued an apology for his behavior following the release of Quiet on Set.
It was wrong. It was wrong that I ever put anybody in that position. It was the wrong thing to do. I'd never do it today. I'm embarrassed that I did it then. I apologize to anybody that I ever put in that situation.
For the talent, staff, and parents who suffered under Dan Schneider for years, this probably wasn't sufficient. And it gets a lot worse. Dan is not the only person to blame for what happened. Nickelodeon was in fact infiltrated by 5 convicted child molesters and 2 other accused pedophiles to work on the set of kids shows, according to legal records reviewed by the Daily Mail. And that includes 2 of the predators described in Quiet on Set: Brian Peck, which was Drake Bell's abuser, and Jason Handy, a Nickelodeon production assistant who had sexual contact with a 9-year-old girl. The network needs to be held accountable. Brian Peck served 16 months for sexual abuse of a minor, was a registered sex offender, and ended up going right back into children's television working for Disney. Hollywood is a nasty business, but because of its performative nature, it can be difficult to stomach. I watched Drake and Josh as a kid, and to watch his testimony was personal for me. Not just as a victim of child sexual abuse myself, but because I grew up watching it. You spend that many hours watching someone, you feel that they're a part of your life. His work made me laugh and smile for many years, and to see him in such a vulnerable light, it was heartbreaking for me to watch, but I am also so proud of him. It gave me a lot of strength to know that I am not, and we are not alone in bearing this cross.
I just opened my eyes, I woke up, and he was sexually assaulting me. I knew that my life was going to be absolutely completely different from that point on.
I kept it a secret for over 10 years, and to know that I am now in a place where I can talk about it publicly is wild. I thought I would die with this secret. I thought I would wait for my 76-year-old abuser to die before I came out with it. But the lie became oppressive as my conscience became refined. I told everyone, including my abuser's family, and they all believed me wholeheartedly. The signs were so obvious, so present. I had people who are once or twice removed from me also suspicious. Yet the one person who decided not to believe me, who in fact blocked me and undermined me by tipping off my abuser, is my very own father. Therefore, it was especially painful but revealing to watch how a decent father would behave by watching Drake's father.
And Drake says they arrested him for a molestation. I go, you're kidding. I knew it. I knew it.
How did it make you feel when you finally found out?
Are you kidding? I'm not the same today. The pain's still there from the moment that I knew. It's just I don't wish this on any parent or child whatsoever. It's just devastating.
I think Brian got a sense that my dad was on the watch. And so he started to really drive a wedge between my dad and me. He just started making me believe that he was horrible for my career. I wasn't going to be able to move forward with him in it. And coming from someone like Brian, I was believing it because he's been in this business for so long and he must know more than us. Also because I was spending so much time more so around him than I was really my dad.
This is only speculation on my part, but I found in the process of making my own documentary about my abuse, those who agree and those who don't agree to take part in an interview says a lot about what's going on. And I just want to give a major shout out to the bravery and vulnerability that Drake's father showed here. It's extremely heroic and not to be taken lightly. Oftentimes, and you see it in this example with Drake, that the abuser will groom the parents as well. I acknowledge my father too was a victim. He too was groomed by who he deemed as his best friend for over 20 years. And it's hard to admit to yourself that you were duped. My abuser abused me, not my father. My father is guilty of neglect, unskillful behavior, and a fear of his own psyche. His deep unconsciousness is what created a void to be used as a vehicle for evil. This is a clip from a pedophile explaining how fatherlessness made his victim an easy target.
Were there certain characteristics that you looked for in children before molesting them?
In children, yes, but more I also looked at their families. If I thought the father was a threat, I would not approach the child.
Drake's father was there, but the documentary explains how he was forcibly pushed out of Drake's life by his ex-wife. My father was there, but he was clueless enough not to question my abuser, even when he showed us both porn while I was underage. Clueless enough to encourage drug use as a child with my abuser, and sending me to sleep overnight every weekend at his house. All to say, fatherlessness comes in many forms. Much of the inappropriate things that kids were asked to do were happening while the parents were on set, but in the other room. Were your parents ever there?
They're in the other room all the time. I mean, these things happen under their noses. I'm one of the lucky ones. I mean, my mom was constantly with me, like constantly.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
Absolutely.
And, but these acting classes are closed off to parents. You're not going to find a serious acting class that's open to parents.
Brian Peck was someone that the child actors looked to for guidance and mentorship. He was a dialogue coach. It was his job to help these kids with their craft. And Drake talks about how close he got with Brian based on their common interests.
He got along with everyone. Everyone got along with him. He'd been working in the industry for a very, very long time. He knew tons about the history of Hollywood, and that's what I loved. We would just rap about stuff like that. Brian and I became really close because we had a lot of the same interests, which, looking back, think that was probably a little calculated.
It was Brian who convinced Drake that his father was a hindrance to his success. It was Brian who convinced Drake's mother that he was a better father figure for Drake than his own dad. As a result, Drake's dad stepped down as his manager and Brian fulfilled the role as a full-time chaperone. We're not sure how many times the abuse happened for Drake. He mentions that it happened repeatedly. For me, it went on for years. The problem was that for so long, I did not register it as abuse. The grooming started at 14 when I was most longing for a father. My father had abandoned me at a very young age, but then came back into my life and just wanted to be cool with me. He just didn't know what to do and inadvertently outsourced his job to a pedophile. By the time I turned 16, I trusted whatever my abuser told me. He kept me high and away from others by infiltrating me with his worldview that the world is sick, so best you stay away from everyone and inundate yourself with drugs and sex. Made psychological sense to a 14-year-old, but now I see behind pleasure lies a tyrant. Behind this mentor is a sick pervert who kept me on a metaphorical island. And behind this sick pervert is his wife who swindles old ladies on their deathbed to financially support a pedophile.
I just exploded, screamed into the phone everything that had been happening to me. My mom immediately called the police. I had to make a phone call to Brian and get him to admit what he'd done. He just started a full-on confession.
The cops recording the phone call is something that I never got, and I don't know if I ever will, thanks to my father. When I first told him what happened to me, he called my abuser and asked him straight up, "Did you do these things to my son?" So my dad basically tipped off my abuser, leaving me little to no chance of getting a recorded confession. Drake got more justice than me, but the story doesn't end there. Here's what happened at the beginning of episode 4.
On the day of sentencing for Brian, I get to the courthouse. It was the most unbelievable thing I'd ever seen. His entire side of the courtroom was full. There were definitely some recognizable faces on that side of the room. Brian had been convicted, but getting all of this support from a lot of people in the industry, and yeah, I was pretty shocked. I looked at all of them and I just said, "How dare you? You will forever have the memory of sitting in this courtroom and defending this person. And I will forever have the memory of the person you're defending violating me and doing unspeakable acts and crimes."
Whether it's Hollywood, the Olympics, the Boy Scouts, or even the Vatican, we need to wake up to the idea that there are institutions actively silencing victims. We still don't have the answers we need about Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Now Diddy is on the run because of similar allegations of child sex rings run by powerful politicians and celebrities. If you're interested in knowing more about that, check out my video about P. Diddy on the run. There is a trend, and the desire to sweep it all under the rug is gonna be there. It is up to us to demand the truth, no matter how ugly the lie. A room where the celebrity voices are siding with evil, and the abused child is left practically alone to shoulder the atrocity. It is why so many decide to swallow the lie. Not being supported, not being believed is a whole nother trauma in and of itself. James Marston, Boy Meets World stars Ryder Strong and Will Friedle wrote letters of support for Peck during his sentencing. To this day, Drake has not received an apology personally from any of those celebrities. Adding insult to injury, right after the docuseries was released, a couple of actors from the show Ned's Declassified, which ran at the same time as Drake and Josh, were actually making jokes about Drake's revelation.
Daniel, we told you never to speak about that. Get back in your hole, Daniel, and give me your holes. Sorry, we shouldn't joke about this. We really shouldn't.
This is awful. Why are we doing this?
Because this is about us. Listen, our set was not like that. And no, it's f***ing awful. The Drake Bell like, that's crazy to hear. That is f***ed, man. And that never came out, which is really wild. Really wild.
Until he was talking about it.
Boop. Boop. Oh, so y'all were in on it. Oh, God.
Wow.
I'm not talking about this anymore. Not talking about this anymore.
No.
Guys, we can't joke like this. Jesus. Guys, we're sometimes humor helps us move through things, you know?
This is just disturbing, but it is exactly what you see from people who are so desperate to protect their ego and the industry that they tie their self-worth to. Pedophilia has become such a pervasive issue. I dare to say it may move to parallel, if not surpass, the evil emblematic of the 20th century if we are not careful. If we continue sweeping this contemporary manifestation of evil, continue protecting powerful people from being implicated, God help us all. I'd like to also give a special shout out to Alexa Nicholas. She is a former actress who was on Zoe 101. She also did an interview for Quiet on Set and became a notable activist against Dan Schneider and Nickelodeon. Go check out her YouTube channel. She is doing some incredible work exposing predatory behavior within the network. Drake Bell's story was definitely the most impactful in Quiet on Set. But if you watch the whole series, there is just a slew of other disturbing stories involving Dan Schneider and these child actors. A lot of these kids were really taken advantage of. As these kids got older, and Drake included, slipped into self-destructive behavior, including drug addiction, which seems all too common with child actors. When your body is violated, drugs are often used to suppress the trauma and quite literally escape the body sensation. I had a lot of fear around sobriety because I was so afraid to deal with the betrayal in my body. But it was also the means in which I found the clarity and the self-forgiveness for healing to take place. In the end, drugs really isn't an escape. The only way out is through. Of course, not every child actor goes through these traumatic experiences. Responsible adults exist. But take it from me, someone who was duped, someone whose father was duped, be vigilant. The temptation to be your kid's friend rather than their parent is gonna be there. Please, please prioritize being a responsible parent. Trust your intuition, do right by your child. Be the adult that your child needs. If you grew up watching Nickelodeon, seeing this documentary might completely change the image that you had of your childhood. But I promise, learning the truth is infinitely better than hiding from it. Seeing my deepest, darkest secret reflected through Drake's story was tremendously healing, and I'm sure for many others as well. That's all the time I have for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Inverted World, and I will see you on the next one.
Nickelodeon.